Hi, welcome back to Miss Candy's Land. So, if you're maybe watching this video, then you've watched the new introduction, and so you know that I'm going to make videos and talk about my life experiences and how I was able to overcome some of the the fractures and the damage within my own internal self, so that I could become someone who could truly give care to others. And I don't mean to jump around a lot. It's just, there's a lot to unpack. And I'm trying to be as authentic as I can without pausing, without editing. I just feel like that's important to me, is that I just speak to you as if I would be speaking to anyone that were just asking me questions about my life. So I'm going to go ahead and jump in. I was born to very young caregivers. And I wasn't the first child. So there was already young people with mental illness and addiction problems already having mouths to feed by the time I entered the picture. So I might have got a little bit more of the brunt. There's some stories swirling about how, some people might even, have tried to end the pregnancy and stuff just because, they weren't in a place to take on another child. And I don't know a lot about my infancy, but starting at 15 months is when fractures that I know of started. So 15 months old, I dove out of a high chair, into a concrete floor and fractured my skull. Still have the scar. No, my crooked camera. Okay. Then when I was 2, I fell down some stairs with a whistle in my mouth. Fractured all of this. And I remember crying and, that it hurt. And this is a story that my family members will tell. They remember it. I was crying, it hurts, it hurts, it hurts. And I got a spanking and sent to bed early. And then I guess at some point, I woke up and the caregivers woke up and, I almost couldn't breathe. All this was swollen, because it was fractured. So, and then I remember when I was 3, jumping on a bed, again, I'm home alone. I'm doing whatever I want. Or if there are adults there, I don't see them. I don't know where they are. And I jumped off the bed into a shelf, and then I fractured this again up here. So those are the 3 that I can, document and know about, and know there were others, but I'm just going to stick with that because I got the receipts on that. Okay. There were, as I got older, there were so many more instances, where I'm alone and bleeding, and someone enters, and as some time had passed, and been like, oh my gosh, what have you done to yourself, type of stuff. So like I said, younger, I don't remember anybody actually putting their hands on me, but I do remember there being some caregiver in charge, but never, they weren't watching. I was completely, like I said, best case scenario, I was completely neglected. If I cried too much because I did hurt myself, I would get in trouble. So I learned to internalize pain a little bit differently than maybe the rest of the world. Very young, I knew that crying about my pain, even though it was an open wound and it hurt, it wasn't going to solve anything. I needed to find help. I knew that by the time I was 3. As I'm running around holding my head like this, looking for someone to help me, right? So that's those are the most prominent memories that I have as a young kid. And then a caregiver, I remember I was watching a Miss America pageant, and I used to love to watch them. And I can't imagine I was more than 4 years old. And I turned around to a caregiver and I said, I'm going to be Miss America when I grow up. And that caregiver said, no, you're going to be a whore, just like, and he named some other family members. And then there were other people around and they kind of laughed, and it was like, that's like the basic starting point, because if you can imagine a child being 4 and younger, going through all these things, bam, 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 By the time I entered kindergarten, I had more of an understanding about life itself in general than most of the teachers. So I always ended up being a teacher's pet because I became a people pleaser because I used my intuitive gift to see what does this person need so I can give it to them so I can get what I need. So I started doing that at a really young age. And I didn't really have that angel of discernment, so I would misread things in a way that would bring bad things into my life, as a young kid. I would get dropped off, it would just be whoever can babysit, right? Like whether they were family members and on drugs with a motorcycle parked in their living room, it didn't matter. It was just who's free. Oh, I've known you for 15 minutes. Can you watch my kids? I'm going to leave them here overnight, right? Like those kinds of things. And so, the darkest parts of abuse, that's a lot of where that happened to me. By related caregivers to me, but some of the others were just being dropped off with people who did not have good intentions. Like they were happy to get this moldable, pliable little girl in their house, especially overnight, right? So, and not to, again, with trigger warnings, I'll put that in a description. I don't want to be selfish in a way that I'm no longer triggered by any of this. It does not define who I am. And again, I will send everyone who may have wronged me a hug and say, man, I really just want you to heal so that this doesn't happen to anyone else. Whatever your tower moment or your consequences for the crime you commit it's not for me to say or even care about. All I care about is that people that do things like this to anyone, not just children, but to any living thing, I just wish that you would heal. I want you to just stop doing it and see that it's wrong and heal yourself, right? But that goes all the way down to the gamut of cussing out kids, right? To see that it's wrong, feel that it's hurtful, and stop and change it, right? No matter what, and push out the intrusive thoughts when somebody is in your face and you just want to jump, to okay, and get out of there, right? I mean, that's what this channel is going to be about, and again, I'm giving my life experiences because, again, working with kids, I'm coming from all these different places in my mind of what I've been through as a child and as an adult. So a little bit more, so pushing on, my life did not improve as I got older. Actually, as I got older, by the time I was 11, my caregivers were giving me, I had my own carton of cigarettes in the refrigerator. I had my own bottles of liquor. They would invite the neighborhood kids and we'd all drink, and then other terrible things would happen, by the time I was 12, I had, the caregivers who came to save me, oh, I'll take you away. You can stay with me for the summer. They would give me, marijuana, pills, things you snort, and I just didn't, I basically just wanted to be safe somewhere. And sometimes I would, okay, I'll do that drug with you because no one loves me, right? I got nowhere to be. And I don't want you to think what you're doing is wrong and then you'll reject me also. So I didn't I wasn't healed my whole life. I've been intuitive my whole life, but healed, absolutely not. No. Again, I became a people pleaser. I would just be like, I can see that you need this from me because if I do this with you, then you feel better about doing it in the first place. You feel better about yourself, and then you treat me better. But the part that I failed to realize, right away was it was going to take me down a path that was going to hurt me, right? I'm thinking I'm doing this to help this person feel better about themselves. But again, with the intention of that making me have a better day or a better dinner or whatever. But I never really struggled with addiction. mess, like because it was coming at me so much, and maybe because it was such a young age. It's always been like a holiday thing, like I don't, or a weekend thing. Like there were points in my life where I would love to go out, partying on the weekends. And I'm talking about my teenage years and young 20s, right? But I could never soak into it, like the caregivers had. Like they were full on addicted. They were, and it never crept up on me like that. I always knew when it was time to put that down. Like, okay, this is no, and put it down. And that didn't go over well either, because then I became the person that, they're addicted and they've been feeding it to me, but somehow I'm not becoming addicted. And so again, if they would have taken introspection at that time, like I said in the other video, oh, take that, put it inside, see what you're doing that's got you here, instead of continuing to project it onto someone else. They continue to project it onto someone else, me. And then scapegoat me. If I get busted with drugs and I'm 13 years old, it's my fault. It was all my fault, even though the caregiver gave it to me, right? It's just, even them, they're going to advocate for each other, or they advocated for each other. One caregiver caught me with it, and the other caregiver, oh, she stole it, right? Like just wouldn't even have known about it at such a young age had I not had adults in my life pushing it at me. But again, like I said, I think that's why I don't have an addictive personality. It had the opposite effect on me. But intuitively, it's because I knew this is going to end. This is going to end. And it did. It did. I also had a child and got married at 16. And the reason I did it on purpose, I did it to emancipate. I did it to get away. Before that, I actually had took a caregiver's car when I was 14 and took off to somewhere else. I ran away from home, and I was walking around the street like, okay, it's a funny story. So let's get to the authenticity of how I would actually tell the story if I was speaking to someone. Okay, so when I was 14 years old, my life was a hot mess. It was my caregivers, were in this. They had just went through a separation of caregivers, and one's leaving voicemails that says, "I'm going to set your house on fire and shoot you as you run out." Like it was terrifying time in my life. And so, kids my age, I would just cling to, I'd just be like, just somebody to have in the moment. And it didn't matter if I just met you. It didn't matter. If you were willing to accept me in that moment, I'm on it. Right. And I just met this person at a store near my house that happened to be friends of friends of friends. And they were on the run. They had run away from home, and I took them into my basement, and we made a plan, and we stole my caregiver's car, and we took off to Washington, D.C. We were supposed to go to North Carolina, but we didn't know any directions. Somehow, and like at the time, it was like the murder capital of the world. So whatever, United States. I had taken caregivers' bank cards and stuff like that because I didn't have any money or anything. So, I had cash that I had taken, and so it got us there. And then once we got there, this person was like, "You got to go in the bank and you got to use this ATM card and see if you can get some money." I went into the bank and he stole my stolen car. Left me there, right? Took off and left me there. And I didn't have shelter. I didn't have anything. Anything that I had taken with me was in the car. So, I just started, for a few days, I just kind of walked around DC, and I was so hungry, and the ATM card obviously didn't work. They had already cut it off because I had been gone now for over 24 hours. So they had discovered everything, right? So I was kind of out of luck. And so I was walking around, and it's like, I kept maybe day 2, because being out there at night with no shelter and just having to walk, I was just so exhausted. I knew I couldn't lay my head down. I knew I couldn't stop, right? I mean, I knew that it wasn't safe. And so I just started walking up. Intuitively, I was looking at people that maybe weren't so damaged here and walk up and I would say, hello, my name is Candy. I stole a cart and I ran away from home and I'm really hungry and I just don't know what to do right now because someone took my car, right? Like I just started walking up to people, and it took a lot of people to not just be like, excuse me, and walk through me. And again, I'm at 14. I don't know. I think I've been this height, which is like 5'2" since then. You know, like I was thin. I didn't seem imposing at all, you know. But eventually someone stopped and, you know, they finally said, oh my gosh, you know, let me help you. So they went and bought me a hot dog and they called the police. And then of course the police called my parents and, you know, yada, yada. But they didn't come and get me. They told them to put me in a home. So I was in a Washington receiving home for like hardcore, like crimes of, you know, teenagers. And it was scary. That was an experience that that really changed my whole everything. Like even just with my intuition, just trying to get a better hold on it and things, because I never saw that coming. Like what I experienced there, a lot of that I never saw coming. It was a shock to me. It was very traumatic. And then, you know, I had to go to court, and then they sent me to another home, and then I had to go to another home. And then anyway, I lived in like a foster type situation, like in this receiving home in my hometown. And I ran away from there. So after a minute, again, kids into institutions are terrifying, especially for kids. And we can say, oh, but Candy, that was X amount of years ago. It hasn't changed because I've worked in them as an adult recently, and I've seen that it isn't. If people don't think you're looking, guess what? They don't think you're looking. And I kind of that part of my life kind of brought the advocate out in me, where I started to shine light, to say, okay, I need to shine light. Like, so this is happening to this girl. Somebody needs to do something, you know? But again, it's really hard, especially if you're on your own. You've already been marked as a criminal. You know what I mean? Like all of that, no one's going to take you seriously. So I ran away from there. That was even worse. Like staying with people that were way older than me, that had no business. They were just taken in runaways from this place because it was close by, right? So not a good situation either. I mean, all these things, these dominoes that just fell. When I got back home, my main mission was to get emancipated, right? And that's what happened when I ran away. Then the judge said, you know what? Just go home. No matter what I had told in therapy, everything that I'd said, I just came across as this, you know, problem child, right? Because certain caregivers knew exactly what to say and how to hold themselves. Like, she's just too much, you know, you just don't understand. We don't know what to do, you know? And so I went back and I made it my mission to get out as quick as I could. And so I became pregnant because I knew where I'm from in the world, there'd be a shotgun wedding, and there was. And that emancipated me. And within a year, obviously, this person was my age. So we, you know, went our separate ways. It wasn't quite that simple. That's another video. But yeah, and two, once I did that, man, the wolves came out, because, you know, once I left that marriage, then everyone's like, wait a second, she's young, she can't have a kid, even though I had done great with my child. Like I had, you know, cared for the baby, and I read the books. Like I did everything I needed to do to find out how to be a mother to this child. And it was like, I'm going to be what I needed. Right. And that didn't go very well because I was young with no resources, and I had never seen how it should go. I had never seen that. So, you know, obviously, as my kid got older and would, you know, break rules, I would yell. Now, I don't ever remember cussing my child, just because I've always had a deep ingrained yuck about that. But I didn't have the patience. I did, but I didn't. It's like, or maybe I had the patience, but I didn't have the gumption or something within me to balance all this out. And the stones that were been throwing, like they would call social service on me like every day, just they would tell me to my face, we're going to take your kid because we're going to put him on our taxes, right? Just nonsense. Very nonsensical, very, and ugly, very ugly. And so because, all right, now if we follow that down, everything that I did was bad, right? I was just totally gaslighted. Like all my scars, all the terrible things that had happened to my body was my fault, is what they would tell me. But I knew it wasn't true. I always knew it wasn't true. What upset me the most is the way that they would act as though it didn't matter or that I deserved it in some way. I think that's really where my pain came from, is that people just acted as though that I deserved it, that me being on this planet and being who I am is bad and wrong, right? And that's coming, when I was really little, like just critiquing literally everything that I do, like just always trying to give me that or take away that self-confidence that I seem to have a lot of now, right? It's like they never took it, we just pushed it down, and now I'm like, once I got to a certain age, it was just like bang, but again, it's because it's all been said, it's all been done, and I'm not saying people need to have it all be said or be done to them to get to this point. I think that's the purpose of why I'm even making this channel, or why I'm even speaking out now, is because all these things happen to me because I could internalize it, into a good way, because I could churn that dark and turn it into light, and I could always be okay, right? Because now when someone else who can't do that or couldn't do that, I understand how they feel, right? Because just because I could do that doesn't mean I couldn't see the point of view of the sheer terror of it all. I could still see all of that. I just had this voice in my mind, or this vision that would come over me of it, everything's going to be okay, but it's almost like it was out of body, and I could, say, see, you're not even really there, but this is what it looks like. And this is what people were going to go through. Like it was already said to me then. When I was young, I would go 4 days and not eat. I wouldn't sleep for days. I would just, it was almost like, a lot of people don't like these terms, but it was almost like spiritual warfare on me when I was young, because nothing was breaking me, right? If I can fall down the steps with a whistle in my mouth, fracture my whole mouth, and cry about it, and then get a whipping for crying about it, do you see what I'm saying? Like that would break someone. But these things just didn't break me, because I was able to pull myself out and look and see how ugly it was, but not necessarily feel it, but know the feeling. And it's hard to explain, but that's kind of how it is. I know the feeling, I know what it feels like, but somehow it was just to say, just so you know, but you're okay. Bang, just so you know, like a pinprick, just so you know, but you're okay. And I mean, that's the best way that I can explain it. And it caused, massive confusion as I was a young adult and stuff, because too, I did go, you can't be here without going through dark nights of the soul, or saying, why does this always happen to me? How come everyone's crazy? I must be the crazy one, right? But there's something called black sheep, and I didn't know anything about that, right? I didn't know that this was even possible, that you could literally come from a string of unhealthy beings and be healthy. Like, I didn't know that. I didn't believe that, right? I just thought there's something internally wrong with me like there is with them. And they would push on that a lot, especially when I would be able to look at them and answer their questions and know things that I shouldn't know. And them, yell at me and be very upset about it, and then flip it on me and be like, you're crazy. But what I would know would come to fruition or would be truth, and they just didn't want to entertain it, right? And when I was an adult, so one of my caregivers got their diagnosis of a mental illness, and one of the time, they had a bunch of breakdowns, and during one of them, I had to go to a therapy session where they could proceed to tell me that they were jealous of me, that because I'm unbreakable, they hate me, right? And that's why it's all my fault, their mental illness. It was all my fault that they were where they were in life, all my fault. And then the therapist there is like saying, now this isn't true, Candy, but you just need to hear it. Why would I need to hear it? I don't understand. Some things about therapies, like I don't understand, and I'm in them. I do them, right? And I even doing therapy, I think, I just can't bring my brain to that, right? Like that I would advocate or even facilitate something so heinous, right? Where clearly this person has probably been through a lot if this is what your patient is saying, and they want you to bring them here so they can tell them everything's their fault because nothing they did to them seemed to work. Right? And I would love to say that, oh, okay, and so we went to that and it was all worked out and that person never did it again, but I can't. It only proceeded to get worse after that. Like I have to run away from some of these people, right? Like they just don't stop. They're like, we're going to break you one way or another. We're going to make sure that you have no self-confidence and no self-worth no matter what, right? So that's why these videos are going to be a little triggering, because they're not expecting that I'm still standing. I'm still standing. And not only that, I'm standing with a passion of unsabotage, of unconditional love, and man, let's all get some love in here so we can give it out, right? Because I don't know anyone that's related to me that thinks this way or even tolerates it, right? So, and I'm not trying to say, oh, it's all bad. I just like everybody else, I'm sure I could come up with some good memories of my childhood, but the reality is they wouldn't involve anyone related to me. They wouldn't revolve, they wouldn't include or involve anyone in charge of caring for me, right? It would be someone I met happenstance or whatever, and I think that's why I'm so passionate about being a caregiver, because it says you're giving care, okay? And I know what it is and I know what it isn't. And even if I take myself out of those experiences, I can put myself in some, my own personal, I can put myself in some other experiences where I watched it happen to other people as an adult. Like I actually watched other adults or saw other adults treating kids in a way that is not, not okay, that I have to report, that I had to do things about, that, so I kind of have seen it, all these different perspectives, my whole existence, of just seeing this really bad situation, of people having kids or getting animal, like you feel like there's something missing within yourself. So you add something to the picture, like a child, an animal, a friend, a relationship. And it always goes badly because that wasn't the answer. You needed to heal yourself before involving anyone else, right? And I learned that the hard way. Again, I learned that the hard way. I've had bad relationships and divorces because, well, I didn't know what love even felt like, right? Especially something unconditional, or how to handle adversity in relationships. Like these are all things I had to navigate in real time while continuing to be strong in myself and in faith and saying, oh God, I know you love me, and I don't know why I've always known that, but I have, but oh God, I know you love me. Please help me through this, right? And just different synchronicities and things that went on in my life in those times is why I'm standing, and I'm still standing. I'm not just standing. I'm a brick house. And I know that was a lot, and this is a long video. But again, if we're gonna get to the meat of it, I have to be authentic and honest with you so that you can understand I'm not talking shit. Okay, that life is hard, and I get it. Oh, I get it. But it's up to you, to simplify it and add ease and be patient with yourself. And remember, everything's not your fault, and that you're loved, and that I love you. See you soon.